Economic freedom isn't about political liberation at all. It's about liberating capital, unshackling the rich, and allowing them to do whatever they want. Freedom for the rich is not a bold new agenda for the liberation of the masses. It is a return to the oldest power dynamic in existence, the law of the jungle. Only the strong survive, kill or be killed. Milton Friedman created a friendly new euphemism for social Darwinism, fooling the public into a flag-waving celebration of freedom as we march to our own economic slaughter. Economic freedom is a euphemism for freedom of the rich. The freedom to exchange what we want, when we want, without coercion, sounds great. But this was never really under threat in our society. What Friedman really wanted was the freedom from democratic control. In his view, the public shouldn't have any say in stopping business from extracting profits whenever and wherever it damn well pleases. Critic George Monbiot summarizes what freedom from democratic control looks like, saying, "Freedom from trade unions and collective bargaining means the freedom to suppress wages. Freedom from regulation means the freedom to poison rivers, endanger workers, charge iniquitous rates of interest, and design exotic financial instruments. Freedom from tax means freedom from the distribution of wealth that lifts people out of poverty." This is the economic freedom that Milton Friedman had in mind. So what has economic freedom gotten us? Well, as discussed earlier, economic inequality has increased to an obscene degree. The rich keep getting richer at our expense. Also, corporations now rival nations in economic power. For example, if Apple's market capitalization, more than $2.1 trillion, was a nation's GDP, it would qualify to be in the G7. Only 7 nations on Earth have a higher GDP than Apple's market cap, according to writer Omri Wallace. If Apple were its own economy, it would be bigger than Canada, Russia, Brazil, or Italy's. You may have seen my posts on Walmart. In one video, I mentioned that if Walmart were a country, its $570 billion in revenue would put them just shy of the 27th richest nation in the world, behind the GDP of Thailand and ahead of petroleum giant Norway in 2022. Do these facts somehow increase the American public's political freedom? Not one bit. Friedman also ignored how greater economic freedom could create its own forms of coercive power. While Friedrich Hayek was willing to concede that economic power can be an instrument of coercion, Friedman gave no ground. The way he saw it, taking economic activity away from the control of any political authority cut coercive power at its source. But does economic power really work that way in your life? Would you say that your employer has no coercive power over you? Of course not. Most multinational corporations operate as top-down totalitarian enterprises. You have no democratic control over your workplace. You almost certainly have no control over how company resources are used or deployed. Frequently, walking into work means surrendering your political freedoms as well. It's possible to lose your job for expressing your political views on social media, for example. Some workers even lose the freedom to go to the bathroom when they want. A 2016 Oxfam report describes how poultry workers often risk losing their jobs over bathroom breaks. According to the report, too many workers tell stories about urinating on themselves or witnessing coworkers urinating on themselves. Workers at major American companies like Purdue, Tyson, and Pilgrim's Pride often resort to wearing adult diapers just to keep their jobs. That sounds pretty coercive to me. Friedman's answer to this is that every worker has the right to exit. The labor market can't really be coercive if any of us can quit anytime we want. Because you are free to quit, none of the restrictions inside a totalitarian workplace matter. It's not slavery after all. You are free to leave. You are free to go without a paycheck if you don't like it. You are free to starve if you don't like your job options. You are free to curl up and die if you don't like pissing all over yourself at your workstation. Freedom. If, as Friedman himself emphasizes, the true essence of liberal philosophy is belief in the dignity of the individual, there's really nothing less dignified than being forced to piss all over yourself to keep your job. The freedom to leave a job does not free business from any responsibility to treat workers like human beings. Economic power can clearly be just as coercive as political power. It is the power imbalance created by Milton Friedman's theories of economic freedom that make this so. Turns out, Friedman wasn't all that bothered about political coercion either. As Friedman's Chicago boys were enacting his free market plans in Chile, former Allende government official Orlando Letelier wrote a blistering criticism for The Nation in 1976. Calling Friedman out by name as the intellectual architect, he detailed how closely the CIA was working with Los Chicago boys to enact Friedman's vision. But the path to economic freedom was not smooth. As Letelier wrote, the economic plan has had to be enforced, and in the Chilean context, that could only be done by the killing of thousands, the establishment of concentration camps all over the country, the jailing of more than 100,000 persons in 3 years, the closing of trade unions, and the prohibition of all political activities and all forms of free expression. Repression for the majorities and economic freedom for small privileged groups are in Chile two sides of the same coin. Less than a month after that article was published, Letelier was dead, murdered with a car bomb in Washington, D.C. His assassin, Michael Townley, a senior member of Chile's secret police, had been admitted into the U.S. under a false passport with the full knowledge of the Central Intelligence Agency. There's nothing more coercive than using torture or murder to achieve one's goals. Yet Friedman was essentially okay with Chile's coercion because Pinochet's crimes were undertaken to advance a shared vision of economic utopia. Writing in Newsweek, Friedman said, "In spite of my profound disagreement with the authoritarian political system of Chile, I do not consider it as evil for an economist to render technical economic advice to the Chilean government, any more than I would regard it as evil for a physician to give technical medical advice to the Chilean government to help end a medical plague." The way he saw it, he was just a doctor administering some harsh medicine to help an ailing economy. Knowing Milton Friedman's true attitude towards democracy should certainly reframe how we understand his loud declarations about freedom. Prioritizing economic freedom is prioritizing the freedom of the rich to do whatever they want. That's not a kind of freedom you should support if you're not rich. In actuality, Friedman and his heroes really liked authoritarians who shared their ideals. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. In the meantime, please like, follow, favorite, and subscribe to my free Substack. Let's make them pay.